In our next video, you'll be hearing from several of our distinguished guest speakers. Each of these guest speakers was given the pitch of Tessilo, our fictional company, and we ask each of them to react to the pitch.
I think Tessilo is definitely got a fascinating niche market. And I think it's an area that is definitely becoming more and more exciting. I know a lot of investors as angels who are really fascinated by space. So that's a really good start. And so it's in a growing market, not just perhaps for the opportunity, but also because there are definitely investors with backgrounds in space or with interest in space that might be ready to invest. It's a challenge because the space market is really only just growing, especially from a commercial point of view. So the restricted number of kind of customers is definitely going to be an issue for them as they get going. I'm quite fascinated by the idea of linking with Italian design, and I can totally see where that might be going. My overall thinking would be that should be really looking at not just the space market, because there are huge opportunities in new materials. And if you're going to bring both design and new materials together, then you should be thinking of what alternative opportunities there might be, almost while you're waiting for the space opportunity to become much more commercial and much more viable over time. I think otherwise the market's too restricted.
It conceivably might be profitable, but it's definitely not an appealing venture. It's far too early. The addressable market is never going to be big enough for it to be a large venture. The very best it can be is a niche company selling a small number of garments at very high margins to space tourists. The whole space tourism industry is very early, uncertain. The number of people going into space is, in the foreseeable future, is never going to be big enough to sustain a very large venture. So yes, it might be profitable as a very small venture, but it's definitely not going to be a large business or something that's venture backable.
I think people would maybe disagree with me, but I think it's actually got the potential to be profitable someday. The challenge for venture investors is how long of a timeline do you have, right? So in this particular instance, space travel is not quite there yet. It could be several years, maybe 10 plus years, potentially a couple of decades before we can get to a point where you can sell spacesuits in large enough volumes to make this a worthwhile opportunity. But certainly it's an exciting thing to think about. And a lot of the best business ideas typically get laughed at initially. So this could be comical right now, but give it 20, 30 years, it might be a business that has some legs.
I think it's possible, but unlikely for what I'm seeing at this stage. I think it's a very difficult seed investment around a product that is not fundamentally based on differentiated technology, but would end up being more of a brand company. I think the timing of the evolution of the commercial space industry is also very unknown right now. So while there's potential there, it's unclear whether that would fall within a typical venture capital fund lifetime. I also think the relationships with the commercial operators are core to this business model. And so being able to build those up now and having to lock down exclusivity before having a real product would be a really difficult lift.
I think it potentially does, but in the very long term. One of the challenges with any venture is getting the timing right. You need the business itself not only to work in its own right, but enabling technologies and enabling cultural phenomena to meet with it. The social networks of the mid to late 90s didn't really take off because photo sharing, bandwidth wasn't sufficient for photo sharing yet. FinTech, likewise in that era, there needed to be a cultural evolution in the late 2000s. I have absolutely no idea whether when we have large numbers of space tourists, they're going to want fashionable suits. They might well, and potentially it's an interesting play, but it seems to me that we're sufficiently far off this market being large enough that I would be very wary about investing in it at this stage.
I think it depends on the time frame and the capital they take to get there. So what I would need to know is how fast will the market develop for space travel, and what is the realistic timeline in which this can become mainstream? What is the stage of development today of the company, and what is the capital they need to get to like a full product, and what is the cost of that product and the price they can charge, and the kind of the unit economics of it. And so I think these are all elements that will inform whether that can be profitable. I have a concern on the time horizon. I think this is a market that will exist for sure, but at the pace at which it will pick up and the volume of people actually traveling in space in 5 years from now, I would be concerned that that's not yet kind of mass market. Even within, by mass market, I mean mass market within the segment that they're targeting, not mass market overall, because I think that's really far off.
I mean, I think those are two separate questions. So, at least when we're assessing an early stage company, we're not looking at its ability to be profitable. We're looking at its ability to be, very, very significant in terms of scale and impact. So I've no doubt it could be profitable. It depends how big the business wants to be. And I guess my primary challenge with the business would be how big it could be, even if it wanted to be really big.
Possibly. It's not the kind of venture that appeals to me. While I love very early stage venture ideas, I like ones where I can see some clear competitive advantage. We don't know what the total size of this market will be. We don't understand what the bases of differentiation will be. We don't know what the competitive space will likely evolve to. And we don't yet understand what the technical needs of Garments for Space are. So I'd be pretty suspicious about a venture like this.
I'm sure it does. It will be profitable if, space is sexy, and so it will probably attract capital.
If you would like to review any of the concepts from this video, please click this button.